Hi, this is Carl, and this is part 3 of the discussion on the Michel Thomas language learning methodology. Now, what I'm not going to do here is to go into too much detail about what I spoke about in parts 1 and 2, but do feel free to go back and consult those particular releases. Although I did mention about the spoken language, the fact that it was the most important point of departure when learning a modern foreign language, since it imitates the way in which we begin to learn our mother tongue. I also made reference to the fact that within the Michel Thomas course what we have is an integration of spoken language and listening ability, whereby on the basis of our knowledge of linguistic structures, what we're getting is the opportunity to give translations, verbal translations of the sentences which we're asked to translate from English into the target language, and thereafter what we are getting is a rendition by the tutor, usually a native speaker of the language in question, but not always, where we can listen to that rendition and become accustomed to and learn the accurate forms of pronunciation, and in addition to that, the appropriate intonation. So I've dealt to a degree linguistically with what the Michel Thomas method is all about. So what I'm going to do now is to just delve slightly more into the psychological aspects of the methodology. Now, this particular comment might not be true, but as far as I'm concerned, Michel Thomas's primary concern when releasing his courses was to get more adults interested in learning a modern foreign language, and I think the methodology itself is more appropriate to teaching adults than it would be for teaching children, although I've not used the Michel Thomas courses to teach any tutees of mine who are children, so I'm therefore unable to comment on the degree of success which the Michel Thomas courses would have with young children. But definitely for adults, one of his primary concerns was to get more adults interested in learning a modern foreign language, picking up a modern foreign language. Obviously, what we need to do if we go back in time, we need to give consideration of the fact that as far as modern foreign languages in mainstream education is concerned, on the whole, the standards of language teaching were very poor. There was little understanding about the psychology which lurked behind linguistic acquisition, and Michel Thomas, as far as I'm concerned, was one of the first people in the 20th century to gain any understanding or to give and consider an understanding of the psychological issues which impede linguistic proficiency, and these are the types of hurdles which we need to overcome, and Michel Thomas sought as far as possible to do that. So the adult brain is there, the adult is there with the Michel Thomas course in question, about to study a new modern foreign language for the first time, and what he's telling us from the outset as part of the ground rules is to erase as consciously as possible any fear we might have about getting something wrong, having the self-belief, and in addition to that, while he doesn't explain it very directly, I think what he's trying to tell us is that throughout our language learning program with Michel Thomas, what we need to do is to instill into ourselves self-belief, positive feelings that we are making progress, and that it's more beneficial if we consider how much we know in comparison to how much, for example, somebody who is an absolute beginner would know, or someone who's been studying GCSE for maybe 1 year. We need to give recognition of the fact that even after 8 hours of learning time, we can potentially be beyond a level which many teenagers would be at GCSE level, and that's just an example. So we need to have an appreciation of our level of knowledge in comparison to how much somebody with less knowledge knows, rather than thinking this is how much I know, but look, this is how much there is to know, and I feel as though I'm never going to achieve that particular goal or even that particular level of fluency or levels. We don't need to be concerned with this, since that was not something which Michel Thomas was seeking to enable us to do.